The dog's bark shattered the silence just after midnight, low and savage, echoing across the Montana Valley like a warning meant for the dead, and Colter Hale was on his feet before the second bark finished, his hand already wrapping around the cold steel of his revolver as he moved through the dark ranch house with the steady calm of a man who had survived too many nights like this to feel fear anymore, expecting a wolf or a thief or trouble wearing boots, but what waited on his porch stopped him cold. A woman crumpled against the door, soaked through with rain, blood darkening the side of her dress, clutching a canvas satchel like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Lightning split the sky as Colter lowered his gun and stepped closer, and when he lifted her, she weighed almost nothing, mud streaking her torn clothes. Her breath shallow, yet even unconscious, her fingers refused to let go of that bag. Inside the house, he laid her near the fire, and the warmth slowly pulled her back from the edge, her eyes snapping open sharp and wild as a cornered animal, scrambling backward, a knife flashing from beneath her skirt, until Colter raised his hands and told her she was safe, that this was the Hale Ranch. But she didn't look at the fine wood or the chandelier or the bearskin rug the way other women always did. She looked at everything like a trap, panic tightening her face as she rasped that she couldn't stay, that she didn't want charity, that she would work for every bite, cook, clean, break her back if she had to, just don't ask where I came from. And when Colter noticed the blood spreading beneath her hand and how she didn't even flinch, he knew she was nothing like the women who had come before. He told her she could stay the night, pointed her to the guest room, and watched her force herself upright and walk upstairs, like collapsing was not an option, not knowing that the moment she crossed his threshold, his life had already shifted beyond repair, because 3 days earlier, Colter Hale had stood on that same porch watching another carriage roll up from the Billings Road. Another woman dressed in silk and expectation coming to claim what they thought was theirs. At 32, he owned more land than most counties, his cattle-fed cities. His name carried weight from Montana to Chicago, and women traveled thousands of miles convinced they deserved him. But Colter had learned the truth. None of them wanted him. They wanted his land, his money, his protection, and he refused them all without apology, sending them home humiliated and furious until the storm brought something different. By the third morning after the woman arrived, Colter expected tears or demands. Instead, he found her scrubbing pots before sunrise, reorganizing the pantry by noon, chopping wood with clean, perfect strikes by evening. She worked harder than men twice her size, flinched at hoofbeats, froze at unfamiliar voices, fear clinging to her like a shadow. Not the fear of a criminal, but the fear of prey being hunted. And when Colter confronted her, she stood toe-to-toe with him and demanded to pay her way, refusing charity with fire in her eyes. So he gave her a job, $5 a week, room and board, and insisted she eat at his table. And that night across from him, he saw the truth in her trembling hands and guarded eyes. She wasn't running from hunger. She was running from someone powerful enough to ruin her. And when he pressed her, she finally whispered the word husband like it was poison, fear flooding her face as she confessed he had money, men, judges, that if he found her he would burn everything Colter owned just to prove he could. And Colter didn't hesitate, telling her quietly that anyone who wanted her would have to come through him first, and for the first time she looked at him with something close to trust, not knowing that the war she brought with her would test every inch of the man who had never lost anything worth keeping until now. By the seventh day, Colter Hale knew peace was already gone, because in town a poster hung crooked on the wall of the general store, offering a reward for a missing wife, painted as unstable and delusional, and the face staring back at him was the woman sleeping under his roof, except the name beneath the sketch wasn't the one she gave him. It was Abigail Crow, wife of Elias Crow, a railroad baron who owned courts and lawmen the way other men owned boots, and Coulter tore the poster down and rode hard for home, finding Abigail in the corral breaking a wild Mustang dust, coating her skin, sweat streaking her face, freedom written in every movement until she saw his expression and the lie fell apart. The moment she saw the poster she shattered, admitting everything she had hidden, the beatings disguised as discipline, the men he hired to drag her back, the power he wielded like a weapon, begging Coulter not to fight him because he would lose everything. But Coulter didn't. Back away, gathering his men that night and telling them the truth, that Elias Crow was coming with hired guns, giving every man the choice to leave, and not one of them moved. Rifles were cleaned, windows barricaded, scouts posted on the ridges, Abigail loading cartridges with shaking hands and a steady jaw because she was done running. 3 days later, dust rose on the horizon. 12 riders and a black carriage. Crow stepping out like a king, inspecting livestock, demanding his wife back, offering money, threatening ruin, and Abigail walking out beside Coulter with a rifle in her hands, choosing her ground at last. The standoff breaking when Crow realized he couldn't win with bullets and rode away promising to starve the ranch instead. And he did. Banks closing, suppliers refusing service, threats whispered through town until the ranch bled quietly, and Abigail tried to leave to save them. But Coulter refused, telling her she was the reason the land meant something now, kissing her like a man who had already decided what he was willing to lose. And before dawn, he gathered his crew and planned a desperate cattle drive to Casper beyond Crow's reach, a march through hell, knowing hired guns would follow, Abigail insisting on riding with them because staying behind would doom everyone, and the drive was brutal, nights without sleep, shots fired. From the dark, an explosion triggering a stampede toward a canyon, Coulter diving into chaos to save Abigail after she was thrown from her horse, hauling her back to safety as death thundered past inches away, reaching Devil's Pass, where Crow's men waited above the trail, a perfect ambush, until Abigail volunteered to distract them, knowing they wouldn't shoot her, riding alone into danger with a white cloth tied to her rifle while Coulter and his sharpshooters positioned themselves above, the ambush collapsing in seconds when gunfire rained down and the hired men fled. And when Coulter reached her again, he kissed her, like a man who had stared into the grave and come back changed, the herd pushing on until they finally reached Casper and sold the cattle for more money than Coulter had ever seen. Enough to free the ranch, enough to fight back, until victory froze on the street when Elias Crow appeared with the sheriff holding a warrant, accusing Coulter of kidnapping, deputies raising guns, the town holding its breath, and Abigail stepping forward, grabbing Crow by the collar and pressing her revolver beneath his chin, exposing his crimes, forcing the law to hesitate, and for once power cracked. The sheriff ordering his men to stand down, Crow humiliated and retreating into the mud, his grip broken not by money but by a woman who refused to kneel anymore. Crow didn't disappear quietly, but his power never fully returned, the story spreading faster than his threats. Judges distancing themselves, men refusing his coin, and Coulter Hale rebuilding stronger than before, the ranch thriving, supply lines restored, respect earned, not bought, and Abigail standing beside him not as a rescued woman, but as an equal, who had fought for every breath of her freedom. Months passed and peace settled into the land like a long exhale, the fear leaving her eyes little by little, until laughter came easier, until she slept without flinching, until she walked the ranch as if she had always belonged there, and Coulter realized something that terrified him more than any war. He loved her, not for what she survived, but for who she chose to become. And when he finally asked her to stay forever, she didn't hesitate, not because she needed protection, but because she wanted him. And under the open Montana sky, they married with the ranch hands watching, rifles resting against fence posts. The woman who arrived, broken now, standing tall in lace with a Winchester beside the altar, the richest. Cowboy in the territory, no longer alone. having found the one woman who never wanted his land or his money, only his truth. And the valley remembered the story for generations, not as a tale of wealth or power, but as the legend of the man who rejected every bride until the woman who wanted nothing arrived and changed everything.